Hello everybody and welcome to Xbox Origins. This channel is basically all about the Xbox. We're going to be taking a look at the system. I figured for the first video on this channel we might as well look at the system itself and do a little review and all that. Now this channel isn't although it's pretty well dedicated to the Xbox, it's not going to be just about the Xbox. It's more of a gaming in general. I'm going to be showing some I'm going to be doing some game reviews and some gameplay videos and stuff like that. But if you're a fan of the original Xbox, then you'll probably like this channel. I'll try and make it as interesting as I can, informative as I can. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is get right into the review. So first things first, this is the Xbox, of course. It was put out by Microsoft. It was released in 2001, November 15th, 2001, which was about 3 days before the release of the GameCube by Nintendo. So they were released pretty close together. It's a 6th generation console. Like I said, it was released in 2001 in North America, and February 2002 in Japan, and March 2002 in Europe. The console was first announced at GDC 2000, that's the Game Developers Conference 2000, by Bill Gates himself, and it was unveiled by him in 2000 and released a year later. Development started in 1998, so it had about 3 years of development time. The development team that was responsible actually started off by disassembling some Dell laptops and using the components to build the console. The console is based on DirectX graphics technology, and it was actually named the Direct Xbox to begin with. But then that name was later changed, shortened to Xbox. So if you're wondering where they got the name Xbox, that's where it came from. It was just shortened down from Direct Xbox. After 3 years of development, the outcome was a 32-bit 733 megahertz CPU, Coppermine based CPU, which Coppermine is just a variant of a Pentium 3 CPU, which Pentium 3 was the in thing at the time of the development and the release. 733 megahertz was actually the most powerful Coppermine Pentium 3 available at the time of development. Now, by the time this thing was released in 2001, it was already out of date as far as the CPU went. For the GPU, the graphics processing unit, it had a NVIDIA NV2A 233 megahertz, which was also a pretty powerful graphics card for the time. In comparison to the PS2 had a 147 megahertz processor compared to a 233, and the GameCube had a 162 megahertz processor for its graphics card. So the Xbox did have the most powerful graphics processing unit of the 6th generation consoles. Of course, if you compare it to the Xbox 360 today with a 500 megahertz processor, it's kind of makes it look bad, but 233 wasn't bad at the time. For memory, it had 64 megs of DDR at 200 megahertz. The Xbox was also the first console ever to have a built-in hard disk drive. Now, consoles, in the past, they had built-in battery packs before, like the TurboGrafx and Sega Saturn. They had built-in battery packs which you could save your games to, but this was the first console to have a built-in hard disk drive. And it was an 8 gig. It had 8 gigs of storage. And so that's a lot of room, like, for saving games and whatever else you wanted to put on there. 8 gigs was pretty big for the time. And you could also get the 8 megabyte cards that plugged into the controllers, which I don't have one to show you, but 8 megs wasn't very big for the time. In fact, some games, just one save file was larger than 8 megs, so it kind of made those cards obsolete for a few games. It was also the first console to have in-game Dolby 5.1 surround sound. Previous consoles could do 5.1 in non-interactable cutscenes and things like that, but this was the first console to be able to do in-game 5.1, and that includes Sony, the PS2, and the GameCube as well. They were unable to do 5.1 in-game until Dolby came out with ProLogic 2. After ProLogic 2 came out, then Sony and Nintendo could do 5.1 in real time as well. But at the time of the releases, the Xbox was the only one that could do 5.1, and it could also output in DTS for DVDs only. So it was the only console that could do DTS. The Xbox was capable of outputting in basically any resolution you wanted. It could do 480i, 480p, 576i and P. It could even output in 720p if you had the component cables. Although none of the games that came out for it supported 720p. And of course DVDs didn't support 720p either, but the system was powerful enough to do 720p if it ever needed to. So now I just want to take a closer look at the console itself. You can see on the front the Xbox logo. We have the eject button, the big button on top, the power button on the bottom, and we have 4 controller ports for multiplayer, and of course on the top another Xbox logo. And if we turn it around, you can see the vents on the side. It's same as on the other side. If we look at the back, we got Ethernet port for online, and the audio video, and the power cord. And on the bottom, just warning labels, and we also have the manufacturing date, which this one, I don't know if you can see that, but it's 2004. So, it's a pretty big console, the biggest one of the generation, definitely the heaviest, probably the loudest as well. There was never any slimmer version of this console, like the PS2 Slim. And I mean, every console that comes out nowadays seems to have a slim version come out later on, but the Xbox, like, this was it. There was some limited edition versions, like the Halo 3, which was like a see-through green. There was also the Mountain Dew, which was very limited. It was like a neon green, and the logo in the center just said Mountain Dew instead of Xbox. And then there was also the see-through blue and purple and red consoles, as well as the limited crystal edition, which I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that one was a Canadian exclusive, but I'm not sure. I used to have that one, but it broke a long time ago and I got rid of it, so I wish I still had it just for, you know, collecting purposes. But yeah, this is the audio video cord. Kind of looks the same as the 360 cord, but it does not fit in the 360. This is the end that would plug into the Xbox. And then you had the red, white, and yellow composite that would plug into the TV. Like I said before, you could also get component cables. I think you needed an adapter to use the component cables, but they were good to have. And the power cord, this is actually the Xbox Protection power cord that came out in 2005 when they had that scare. Consoles made before, I think, the 23rd of October 2003 were heating up and catching on fire, so they replaced all the power cords with these safety power cords, and which my console was manufactured, I think, in August 2004, so I don't really have to worry about that, I guess, but I don't know, it's good to have one, I guess. So that's cool. That's, of course, the end that would plug into the wall, and this is the end that you would plug into your Xbox. And so yeah, those are all the cords. I mean, I could dig out an Ethernet cord, but I'm sure everybody knows what an Ethernet cord looks like. You would use that to connect to Xbox Live. The console was out for almost a year by the time Microsoft announced Xbox Live. Xbox Live was announced in November of 2002, and by July, I believe, or sometime in 2004, they had reached 1 million subscribers, so it grew quite quickly. Microsoft also used to give out these 2-month free trials with most of the games, anything that had an Xbox Live multiplayer component. I actually have an unused one here. So yeah, these used to come with every game, 2-month free trial. I think they only give you like 48 hours now, and most of the time they don't give you anything, any trial whatsoever for Xbox Live. So, but of course it's grown since the Xbox 360. Xbox Live is, well, we all know what it is nowadays, so I don't really have to talk about that too much, although Xbox Live was a big part of the you know, the moderate success that the original Xbox had, with games like Halo 2, of course. But yeah, the Xbox is basically the console that started it all for Xbox Live and the whole online thing. The PS2 had an online component as well, but you had to buy an external adapter, network adapter, and the GameCube had a very poor online service, which basically had no games supporting it. But Xbox Live had quite a few games, and of course one of the bigger games, Halo 2, definitely helped Xbox Live become what it is today.